Clarity by Dragonsin, Chapter 17, Break, Part 2. Kitsune/Naruto released the low growl that was lost amongst the cornucopia of other animal noises, the tittering of a couple nervously gossiping high school birds, a hippo of a laborer who was at least twice the age of everyone else there, and whose every breath sounded like a surge from the warehouse's clogged ventilation system. A pug's hooves scraping against the concrete impatiently as he shifted back and forth in what little room the rest of the crowd afforded him. The hyena laughs of a couple of white-fanged grunts who looked to be as young as most of the recruits, yet had a chip on their shoulders as obvious and fragile as their papier-mâché masks, though the brassy microphone at the front somehow cleared their throat. A snorting bull about to charge. Showtime! Quiet down! They did, watched as Adam Torres stepped out of his lieutenant's shadow. The two on the stage were the same faunish species, but where the muscled officer represented everything brutish and ungainly about boviness, Taurus was the sacred cow, its horns, my brothers and sisters, and his words were the tip of the dagger, chisel head prying open old wounds. He didn't need to rely on physical presence like his lieutenant, didn't need the jerry-rigged sound system to lend his words infamy, nor the antique light system to make him look like a movie's rogue underdog. When he spoke, people listened. After a few seconds, Kitsune had heard enough. He proceeded to tune the warmonger out, turning away from the stage and combing the crowd for anyone else not paying attention, anything in the background that didn't belong. There was nothing. No one was not paying attention. Even the rank and file, who were supposed to be watching the potential recruits for the centers or the exit for the police, were instead fixated on the front, noting all along to the points with the gospel congregation. Frankly, it was kind of annoying. Oh, Naruto understood how so many people under the correct circumstances could be coerced through a few saccharine words uttered in the right tone. After all, he'd been much the same, taken in by the blank of general promises made by a psychopath. Everything will be all right. I will teach you how to fight. There will not be a reason to fear ever again. If you get rid of your emotions, you'll never have to feel pain again. If you get rid of your sense of self, you'll never have to be alone again. There was a comfort in conformity, the certainty of not asking questions. For a long time, Kitsune thought he was following the logical path in life, and then he'd been rescued by Gigi, found out he'd been wrong, and now he could understand how these gullible people could be swayed. It wasn't simply logic that won the day, and things weren't always what they seemed. But there was nothing in Taurus's hateful rhetoric that spoke to him, nothing jumping out to bite like a poisonous viper in the leaves. In Kitsune's opinion, the man was as bullish as he portrayed himself. The only thing restraining Taurus from an all-out war against humanity was the lack of resources, hence the recruitment rally. Hence why they really want an Atlantean super weapon. But then where was it hiding? Kitsune disappeared into the crowd of older adults and teens, not begrudging his diminutive height while it lasted. Though while Adam's speech lasted, everyone was stuck still and made it hard for him to move unnoticed. Still, the Gaul wouldn't be satisfied with the lack of evidence, and neither would Naruto himself. At the very least, he needed a new lead, and the only way to do that was to investigate around back, while the rest of the White Fang was distracted. "Hey, you!" They weren't the only ones. Figures he would run into one grunt with situational awareness the one time he wasn't paying attention. "What are you doing back here, Brat? All the interesting stuff is happening back there." It was a none too subtle insinuation that Naruto better pay attention to Taurus' speech, and an obvious threat that would happen if he wasn't. Unfortunately, while he was good at stealth, this slip-up notwithstanding, Kitsune was not exactly subtle. That was Taka's department, though looking at his recalcitrant teammate right now was probably not the best option either. Sai's social ineptitude would be humorous and disarming, though probably wouldn't do anything for the sawed-off shotgun the faunus in front of him fingered with growing distrust. What would Namekuji know? What would Sakura do? Besides pummel the man until he was nothing but a stain in the ground? His head was pounding, and he couldn't think of anything except the Dogal's orders rapping instantly on his mind with the irritability of someone waiting for the toilet stall. I need to go to the bathroom. What Kitsune could see the man's face beneath his mask didn't change, and neither did the impatience in his voice. Seriously? Serious. Naruto could do. Yes. With that one humorless word convincing them it was a matter of life and death. Well, to Kitsune it was. Ah, for fuck's sake. With a sigh, the man took one hand off the sawed-off shotgun to rub his forehead. You're a big boy. Can't you go outside and piss on a wall or something? While Naruto himself was unamused, he raised an eyebrow, wondering if his fellow faunists caught the irony of such an action. The assassin shrugged and was about to walk off to do just that when the White Fang caught him on the shoulder. On second thought, cops catch you doing that, and you lead him right to us. Kitsune had little choice but to let himself be led like detained criminal by the White Fang guard, not only because he was supposed to remain undercover, but also because his funnest mind turned out to be a gecko and had a suction cup grip on his shoulder that wouldn't come off unless he removed the entire hand. Shit, you'd get busted for indecent exposure while the rest of us get put up for terrorism. It'd be funny if it weren't so pathetic. Hard to say who'd be more fucked. In prison, they'd probably think you were a narc for getting such a light sentence. At the very least, you'd be the butt of every joke. Number one or number two. Ketsu's fingers twitched. It's to jam themselves into the man's eye holes, but he managed to restrain himself and was thankful he didn't have to betray himself by talking. Shit, of course. Figures this would happen while I was on duty. I wasn't even supposed to come tonight. Had to fill in for my friend who said his human's boss making him work overtime. Though with that guy, he's really probably already halfway drowning in some cheap beer. The man seemed willing enough to fill the silence with idle chatter himself, drowning out Torres's speech long before they ducked into the administrative hallway behind the stage. He should have been thankful Kitsune wasn't on the hunt. Prison would be the least of his worries if Dokal hadn't made it clear Kitsune better be bleeding before there was a drop on any of his weapons. It had nothing to do with the bleeding heart huntress who had made him turn a corner and refer to his teammates by their given names. They made an abrupt turn right in front of an open doorway which led out into another grand room identical to the one they had just left. This one, however, appeared to be filled with boxes rather than people. Bathrooms there. Kitsune was shoved into a concrete box, the door slammed shut behind him. No, wait, it really was a bathroom. The rush of wind as the door nearly flattened his nose blew away the foul smell for a few moments, but when it rushed back into his nostrils with a vengeance, oh! Resisting the urge to puke, not only would it be unbecoming of an assassin, never mind that he was alone in the locker-sized facilities that were so basic as to not even have a sink. That fact that it didn't have a sink and smell alone dissuaded him from opening any orifices while inside. Even if he truly had to go, relieving himself outside would have been preferable. Kami, with his sensitive nose, he could hardly stand it. How did the other faunaces? Maybe there was another set of facilities for them to use, and this one was relegated for a place to torture prisoners and nosy teenagers. It made sense with the lock nearly latched shut behind him. Hurry up already! I ain't got all day! There was nothing Kitsune wanted to do more than hurry up and get out of there, but first he had to find his smoking gun. As smoke rises, he quickly assumed his surroundings, careful to not actually touch them for fear of contracting something before looking up. There was a vent that did nothing to fumigate the rancid air, covered only by a rusting grate that was secured by two flathead screws. Without even taking a closer look, he could tell the inside was likely crowded with cobwebs and dust as thick as the audience on the other side of the sheetrock wall, as thick as the crates of dust that he swore he saw piled in the other room. He'd gotten only a fleeting glance of the other cargo bay, but Kitsune was all but positive that was what they were. Although, given what he was about to do, there was an equal chance that he was going insane. However, he needed to be sure, and so he swallowed what little pride he had left, making sure nothing else came with it, and leapt up onto the ivory toilet seat, which he noted had once been white porcelain. Oi! Lift the lid before you go shit in your pants. I don't want to have to clean up in there. Fire cleanses all sins, Taka once said. In this instance, Kitsune was ready to agree, ready to wipe the stain off a room of the blueprint with his guard inside. Hey, don't go breaking things either. He was perhaps rougher than he should have been, slamming the toilet seat up, but he told himself it was to placate his guard rather than a very personal antagonism he might have been feeling towards the command. However, it wouldn't do to break the toilet and be unable to reach the vent, or worse, fall in. Fickle though it was, luck seemed to be on his side. The two screws were only finger tight and came loose without a squeak thanks to the layer of grease over everything. He set down the unlatched grate so that it spanned the open hole beneath his feet and pocketed the two fasteners for later, carefully to leave no footprint in the grime as he hopped up the short distance to the opening and hauled himself into the tight compartment. It was every bit as horrible as he imagined, and a skosh tighter than estimated. Assassins might have trained to disregard their humanity, but this place wasn't fit for a rat. Kitsune felt like a cat, liquid filling in every corner of the rectangular shaft, while cobwebs like whiskers led him further towards his goal. He hoped. He didn't want to. He didn't want to consider the possibility that there wasn't a grate on the other side for him to spy through. He didn't want to second guess himself by what he'd merely glimpsed. Didn't want to breathe the stagnant air, which fortunately he could barely do any more because of how tight it was against his chest. His situation wasn't pleasant, but the situation his mental coping mechanism came up with was hardly better, in his opinion. Naruto began to wonder what kind of faunus Karna had been was. One did not simply cease to be a faunus like one did not stop being a killer. Even if they exist every physical association in their lives, the scars would remain. What scars did she have? More than a scab at the base of the spine visible just above the waistline of her petulant too short trousers, more than stitches which could be hidden by black hair cropped short like a coal miner's. The quiet assassin didn't exactly go talking about these things. Her ability to go unnoticed must have been a blessing. But what of the others, and why hadn't it occurred to him before that people like them weren't born as assassins? Something in each of their lives pushed them to be together. This was the first time Kitsune could remember having to push himself forward alone. Pushing these distractions thoughts out of his mind as the sieve of light approached, he couldn't be caught off guard again. Wriggling up the grate, light on the other side passed through the horizontal slots, and he was struck blindsided. Where were the crates he had seen? He was sure he had seen them. He might have been slightly less stable of late, but he wasn't insane. Suddenly aware of being hemmed in, Kitsune was starting to get claustrophobic. Another first that he didn't have time to desire to appreciate. Even though his heart was beating against the metal ventilation shaft so quickly, he was sure it sounded like an old-style fire alarm. He had expected people to start running out of the building, screaming, "Did you get all those crates of dust loaded on the trucks?" A couple of White Fang rank and file strolled lazily into Naruto's field of view, miraculously not hearing his mild panic attack. "What the fuck does it look like?" the other White Fang retorted with brash female sarcasm. "Loaded and secured, already on their way to the client's drop-off, with no thanks to Auburn. Where the fuck is that chatterbox, anyway? Thought I saw him standing in line for the loo. What? How long he been there?" How long had it taken Kitsune to navigate the laboratory's red maze of dust? Hard-earned experience taught him that even under the worst conditions, ration bars and foregoing didn't make for the most fiber fuel of meals, nor the most comfortable of bathroom trips. Facilities in a group setting could be unavailable for a maximum of about half an hour, long enough to miss out on all the fun. The first fauna snorted, scanning the pages of his clipboard lazily. "Night's not over," the female growled gutturally, a deeper sound than one might first assume from her diminutive frame. "New shipments coming in. Say why we need to move all the boxes out to begin with, remember? Needed to make room. Bastard's gonna work double to make up for what we missed." I'm sure I don't envy him. Near the Kitsune, he should have killed the man and stuffed him in the locker-sized water closet. It would have been more expedient, not to mention given the man a legitimate excuse to be absent rather than milling about while an adolescent supposedly took a dump. However, Kitsune couldn't afford to linger on all the different ways he was going to anomaly make the White Fang's life a living hell. He had only two choices before him: follow the trucks to this mysterious client, intercept the upcoming robbery. Both required him to get out of his metal straitjacket and someplace he could feel his legs again. It could still take time, and by then the trucks carrying the previously stored dust would probably be halfway to the desperate drop-offs. Although he didn't know where the new shipments was coming in either. Guys, you still here? I thought you'd be halfway to the docks by now. Now Kitsune didn't know whether to murder the gecko faunus or spare him as he came jogging up to his allies, with each ragged breath spilling more of the critical info. Oh hey, looks like you already got the crates for that woman located already, did you? You bastard! I had to take care of every single one. You just ditched us so that you didn't have to lift a finger. The cargo bay wasn't completely empty. Racks of what sounded like heavy metal tools clanged to the ground as the female White Fang soldier knocked her chatty ally into them. Outside of Kitsune field of view. Whoa, 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 hang on! The commotion gave Kitsune enough cover so that he didn't have to worry about betraying himself with noise while making his way back. With a judicious application of aura out of his hands, he shot himself backwards out of the vent system like a bullet, confident that there was no longer anyone on the other side to hear him burst out and make a beeline for the docks. Although that left no one to overhear what was said next. Did you say all the crates, even 45L14A through E? Papers on the clipboard flipped like the gecko's fondest lips. There was no actual need to look it up. What does it look like? Oh crap, those had the parts for you know what hidden in them. No, I don't, you know what. Wait, you mean shit! Finally catching up to what the others were talking about, the faunus who had landed on the crate suddenly dashed off, hoping to stop the trucks before they could leave and scatter the stolen paladin parts across the city. The other two just stood and sat there, once again letting their comrade do all the work while they struggled to process their fuck up. Clarity. I hate being wrong, Ruby thought suddenly. Team Ruby had chased after Sun for several hours, even after leapfrogging the huntsman's other pursuers and leaving them in the dust, but they never managed to catch up with the wily monkey faunus. So with nothing else on the menu for the day and the morning burned up along with a boxcar full of calories, Team Ruby decided to snag something to eat before heading back home. Unfortunately, it was this simple, seemingly unconscious decision which set things off again. Who knew what so much baggage was wrapped up in food? A whole class of political between a simple bowl of noodles and a handmade pasta, or the difference between a burger and a beef Wellington. It was difficult to tell who started the beef, but Weiss had made a snide comment about the White Fang, which Blake diffusely reacted to. It had been 2 hours since they had gotten back, and 3 hours since they started arguing again. The plane ride almost as tense as the one that left Ruby stranded. You think there's a record for longest argument? Yang whispered to her sister, not too subtly, almost hoping the two combatants would take notice. No such luck. Both set of partners continued to argue as if there were a wall separating them in the room. Yeah, we have it. Ruby didn't miss a beat as she watched the back and forth, like a tennis match that had gone on for way too long. 37 hours. The incident. Oh, right, forgot about that. Yang's eyes glazed over before they migrated back to Whis. I don't understand why this is causing such a problem. Wish's voice rose above the spectators' mental walls as the girl rose on her high heels to tower over Blake. That is the problem. The retort came back just as loudly, if only their quiet teammate could be as pissed about their friendship. You don't see that you're doing anything wrong, but you're judging faunus on their first glance without getting to know them. It's hypocritical. Hypocritical? It's always guilty until proven innocent when it comes to Faunus, Blake accused blandly. You were the only one that didn't openly speak out when Cardin was bullying Velvet. Oh, please. I didn't see you stepping up, we snapped. The only one among the 8 of us to do anything was Ruby, and I never said it was a good thing. At least I spoke up and made it clear that I condemned his actions. Honestly, no one could remember what she said in wake of their captain's proactiveness, but the way Blake was yelling now would no doubt incise this memory in their team's collective history, assuming they lasted that long. Though you claim not to follow in your family's footsteps, it's something hard to tell. Talk about history. You were defending the White Fang. As scandalized, Weiss sounded like she couldn't even believe her own words. Like you are now. I'm defending what they originally stood for. Blake did not refute the accusation, which only made the Harris the more nervous, guarding against the display of weakness. She folded her arms and snorted, Yeah, and what's that? They want and have always sought equality, peace. Peace? Wheezed as if all the breath had been knocked out of her. Those rogues have waged an all-out war on humanity, using whatever means justify their twisted ends, and you want to say they want peace? Not seeing anything they could do to stop it, Ruby and Yang watched helplessly as the argument continued to escalate. They wanted peace as well, but they had no idea how to get about enforcing it without without factionalizing themselves in the process and further straining the team's bonds. Although Ruby was worried that if they didn't do anything soon, someone would say something that couldn't be taken back and break those bonds forever. As far as I'm concerned, they're no better than those damn assassins. Something like that. Don't you dare compare us to them! None of them had been prepared for the roar that came from Blake, the slumbering cat turning into a lioness and making herself heard at long last. What are you? Two things, kindness and equality. She held up 2 fingers in a mockery of sign of peace, taking off her list of grievances like the seconds before the start of a war. At every peaceful protest, this was all that was asked for. Was it ever considered? No. Instead, we were met with nothing but contempt and pushed to violence. Wait, had she just said, and you wouldn't give it up? No time to pause and consider it was made to clear that the rant wasn't done. Well, we all know that the negative emotions attract grim, yet keeping us suppressed was even more important than everyone's safety. Families forced out their homes in the name of peace, fear, unaffiliated groups attacked in secluded areas, cases of lynching which have gone uninvestigated to this day. And the minute we decide to fight back, you have the gall to call us terrorists? Blake's eyes were now focused on Weiss. She stomped forward and placed the remaining fingers, the one representing reciprocity, and the Harris's face. Yet you sit here silent on your high horse and condemn us all as criminals without morals, when it was your company and your kingdom's inhumane practices that helped lead to this. Weiss silent as the victim of honest discrimination, choking and wide-eyed while behind her the bystanders continued to say nothing. So don't you dare compare us to those monsters when you were the one who made us into what we are. Blake had become a beast, growling and baring her teeth, which the three only now noticed had canines slightly longer than a human's. Us? They only just noticed how they had neglected to shut the door to the room, discovering Cardin Winchester of all people standing out in the hall looking in shocked confusion. The anger crowding the room was sucked up through the open door, and his gaping mouth, like smoke, instantly replaced with a horrible clarity he'd heard her say, Us. Blake's eyes moved around wildly, like a trapped cat, also looking for an escape. Blake, her captain tried to call her gently, but the whisper might as well have been a gunshot to the startled Faunus, who bolted out the door, pushing past Cardin before he or any of them could react. Blake, wait! The huntsman was still stuck up against one side of the doorframe as Ruby slipped past him into the hall, searching for her teammate, but Blake had already slipped away. Clarity. It felt great to move again, fresh air as delicious as that noodle dish he pretended not to be partial to. Assassins weren't supposed to indulge in such guilty pleasures, weren't supposed to have opinions when it came to extraneous things such as style, comfort, taste, he would have preferred the open air of the rooftop to the enclosed space of the alleyways. But Kitsune knew that this was one time he couldn't afford to be seen. Besides, the rally wasn't that far from the docks, and it was all relative anyway. Just like a cup of ramen was preferable to the tasteless MREs they typically had in the field, Vale's web of interconnected allies like cracks in a dry lake bed were better than the cramped air dust and stifling crowds he had just escaped. Kitsune still detested confined areas with lots of people, the last kerfuffle of a mission not helping this phobia. It also did not escape his notice that, like last time, he once again without a mask. However, if he could just go without running into the red-caped huntress, everything would be. Latching onto a drainpipe, Kitsune swung himself around the next turn tight and blind, almost flinging himself straight into someone. But with his reflexes already turned to the low altitude parkour, Kitsune managed to throw himself over them, landing with a skid on the other side, and spinning around to face the obstacle, which was as unexpected as the girl's spotless smile and green tyrol dress. Kitsune reached behind his back with the one hand that wasn't keeping him off the mossy alley floor, but stopped before he could draw the tanto that wasn't there, reminded of his orders. More than that, though, he was disarmed by the strange girl's smile, which hadn't wavered even as the breeze ruffled her ginger hair and picked up the discarded plastic bag by her feet, almost as if she had expected him to come around the corner. "Hi!" Kitsune flinched at the unexpected greeting, once again starting and stopping towards his small arsenal of concealed weapons. Once again he forgot about his lack of a mask as he stared into her gem-like green eyes, looking for something hidden at the bottom of them or behind her portrait of a smile. There was nothing. "My name is Penny. What's yours?" End of chapter 17.